Hey guys, how's it going? I am Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. Yes, we have had Stage 4, Week 4. There are 2 games remaining in the regular season. 2 games. By Joe, has that gone quickly? We are getting to the real nitty gritty now, and it's real close for those remaining playoff places. Real flipping close. Real close. But we're starting off with our fixtures, our results from this week. Some crucial scorelines here. Starting off with the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Boston Uprising. This had big implications for the playoffs. Boston wanting to seal a playoff place. Seoul needing a win. Seoul really need wins. Badly. And they don't get them. Boston beat Seoul 3-1. Basically sealing Boston's playoff place. But Seoul are in massive trouble. They are struggling to get this playoff. And, you know, this is Seoul Dynasty. This is Lunatic High. Lunatic High were the most dominant team in Overwatch before the Overwatch League came. And now we're talking about them missing out on the first season of Overwatch League playoffs. At the start of the season we had it nailed on. NYXL, London Spitfire, and Seoul Dynasty would make it. Seoul Dynasty might not make it. That's massive. That's massive. But big result for Boston there. Big result. And they finally break that losing streak. They get a win in Stage 4. Crucial. They break the duck they've been having. Shanghai Dragons taking on the Florida Mayhem. This is a dead rubber in all senses of the word. They can't do anything in the season standings. They can't do anything in the stage standings. There is no money to play for. Well, there is money to play for about seedings, but they can't even change either. Florida are going to finish 11th, and Shanghai are going to finish 12th. But this is a close game, and if any game was on a plate for Shanghai to win, this was it. It goes to 5 maps, but they choke on the last map. Florida Mayhem beat the Shanghai Dragons 3-2. I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it again. This was Shanghai Dragons' best opportunity to win a match, and they didn't. I believe now we're going to see a 0-40 season for Shanghai. A big rework is going to be needed in the off-season for Shanghai if they want to stand any chance in the next season. The ever-improving Dallas Fuel taking on the Houston Outlaws in the Battle of Texas. This is always a nice one to have a showdown with. I really thought Dallas would win this one, but they don't. They do lose to Houston 3-1. But it's not an absolute calamity for Dallas, considering they have to take on Florida Mayhem later in the week, which we'll go over in a minute. Dallas are still looking fairly good this stage. This was also a fairly big game coming up. Los Angeles Valiant taking on the London Spitfire. London Spitfire looking a bit inconsistent of late, but they have been improving. Birdwing is starting to find his form again just in time for the playoffs. Valiant are just insane right now, let's be honest. They're unbeaten this stage. And they remain unbeaten in the stage. 2-1 to the Valiant. It's a very close game. Spitfire run them very close, but Spitfire, they have this age-old problem. It's called control. Oasis is by far Spitfire's worst map. They are not too good on the pool. And it's something Spitfire really need to clean up. Then we move on to the second LA team in action. The Gladiators taking on the New York Excel. Excel coming off the back of a loss last week to Valiant. And it seems that this stage they have a bit of a problem with the LA teams. They lose to Los Angeles Gladiators 3-2. It's a bit insignificant for Excelsior. They were experimenting with things, and Excel have sealed their number 1 spot. They've not sealed stage playoffs, but I'd be surprised if they missed out on them. But this for Gladiators is massive. Not only does it really benefit them in the stage playoff hunt, it massively benefits them in the season playoff hunt. Because this was a game everyone expected Gladiators to drop and open a door for people like Fusion, Houston, Seoul. But they don't drop it. So this is massive for the Gladiators. That's a massive win for the Gladiators. Unbelievable. and Excelsior have lost 2 in a row. New San Francisco Shock taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. Again, a very big game for different reasons. Shock, it's a big game for them for their stage playoff chances. Fusion, it's an absolutely massive game for their season playoff chances, because yes, Fusion can get into those stage playoffs, but I think they're more worried about their season playoff chances. This is an extremely close game, but it's 2-1 to the Fusion. Massive win for the Fusion. And on the back of the Seoul Dynasty loss to Boston Uprising, it's even bigger. It's massively bad for Seoul. It's massively beneficial for Fusion. And it has all sorts of implications. All sorts of implications. We'll look at the standings in a minute. Then we had the Boston Uprising taking on the Shanghai Dragons. Again, Boston have broken their bad form, their run of losses. This is the Shanghai Dragons we're talking about. 4-0 to the Boston Uprising, no surprises here. Boston looking good for those season playoffs. Dallas Fuel taking on the Florida Mayhem. Again, Dallas Fuel ever improving. Florida Mayhem on a bad turn of events right now. They looked better about ended stage 2, stage 3-ish. But that's 4-0 to the Dallas Fuel. And Dallas Fuel are looking good right now for those stage playoffs. They can't do anything for the season, but stage playoffs is still money at stake. And every bit of cash counts. Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Seoul Dynasty. This is massive. For around that 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th spots. This is a massive game. And it's a 5-map game. I don't think anyone's really that surprised about that. Seoul needed a win, Fusion needed a win. It's a massive, massive game. And Fusion win it. Seoul have gone 0-2 in a week they really couldn't go 0-2. So, yeah. Seoul are in a bad place. Very bad place. London Spitfire taking on Los Angeles Gladiators. Gladiators coming off the back of a win over Excelsior. Spitfire coming off the back of a loss against Valiant. Spitfire again, improving. But have they improved enough? The age-old problem with Spitfire. Control, and they have 2 bogey teams in this league. Houston Outlaws and the Los Angeles Gladiators. 2 teams they can't beat. And they still can't beat them. They lost to Houston 4-0 at the start of this stage. They lose to Gladiators 3-2. They were 2-0 up at half-time, Spitfire. This is like... It's so bad that they lose that game. They shouldn't lose that game, and it all comes down to, I think Spitfire is heavily based on momentum at the moment. 2-0 up, going into half-time. They looked good, but then along comes this little map called Oasis. Of course, Spitfire lose Oasis, and then that momentum has gone. And it shifts to Gladiators, and there's no like half-time to stop that momentum, and Gladiators take it on a reverse sweep, ending on the pull. New York Excelsior in action again, coming off the back of 2 losses in a row against the San Francisco Shock, who are ever improving. Again, these younger players, Sinatra Super for Shock, if they had them all season, Shock would probably most definitely be in the seasonal playoffs. I think it's looking real good for next season for Shock. Excelsior are taken real close here, but it is 2-1 for Excel. Excel managed to get the win. Again, it doesn't really matter too much for Excel. And for Shock, yeah, it dents their chances of stage playoffs, but they can't do anything in the season. It's not a dead rubber game, because Shock still want to get into their stage playoffs, but Excelsior, I can't say it's a big win for Excelsior, because it really isn't. It's Excelsior mixing things up, experimenting in preparation for the playoffs, so it's a win for Excel, let's put it that way. Houston Outlaws versus Los Angeles Valiant. This is kind of a big match for Houston. Valiant, obviously unbeaten. Houston need wins. They need every win they can get to get into those season playoffs. But the worst possible thing they could do against Valiant was lose 4-0. And they lose 4-0. Houston is so inconsistent. If they can beat Fuel 3-1, they can take a map off Valiant. So, I don't know. That's a bad loss for Houston. That's a bad loss for Houston. But it's still wide open. Because now, we're going to have a look at the standings. But first we're going to have a look at the stage standings. Now, I'm sure that everyone in LA who likes the Overwatch League is very, very happy with these stage standings at the moment. Los Angeles Valiant are in that top seed first place, 8-0, no losses so far, and second you have the Gladiators. It's a real good stage for LA right now. Los Angeles will be having a party. But in third we have the New York Excelsior on a 6-2 record. They still have the best map differential. Excelsior is such a nutty team. I think we're going to see Excel in those stage playoffs, unless they somehow drop another game. But I don't see it happening. In fourth, you have the rejuvenated Dallas Fuel with a 5-3 record. But that 5-3 record is shared with the Philadelphia Fusion in fifth and the Houston Outlaws in sixth. That 4-0 loss to Valiant really hurting Houston in terms of that map differential. With a 4-4 record in 7th, you have the San Francisco Shock, who are still in with a chance, but a very slim chance. In 8th, the London Spitfire are on a 3-5 record. They can still actually mathematically reach the playoffs, but it's very difficult for them. Almost impossible. Now, the teams that don't have anything to play for in terms of the stage standings. In 9th, you have the Boston Uprising, who finally got some wins on the board this week with a 2-6 record. That is shared with the 10th placed Seoul Dynasty. Man, it's like Seoul Dynasty and Dallas Fuel have real changed places this stage. That's just crazy to see Seoul down in 10th. Florida Mayhem in 11th, no surprises there, with a 1-7 record, and Shanghai, again, without a win, 0-8 in 12th. Now, that's really, yes, it's big for those teams like 1st to 6th to 7th-ish, but the league standings are where everything is going to start counting big time now. There are 2 games remaining in the season. New York Excelsior have sealed up that number 1 seed. That's not going anywhere. Los Angeles Valiant are looking good. They will finish either 2nd or 3rd. Boston Uprising are up into 3rd with those 2 wins this week. Spitfire down to 4th from 2nd earlier this stage. Their record is 23-15. It's shared in 5th with the Gladiators and in 6th with the Fusion. The playoff places are occupied by New York Excelsior, Los Angeles Valiant, Boston Uprising, London Spitfire, Los Angeles Gladiators, and the Philadelphia Fusion. Now you have 2 teams who are chasing those playoff places. In 7th you have the Houston Outlaws. They are on a 21-17 record. They share the same record with the Seoul Dynasty. Those 2 teams can catch the playoff pack. But there are 2 wins between them. So, you've got to ask for either London, Gladiators or Fusion to lose both of their games next week. It's a massive ask. And it's going to heavily depend on who those teams are playing. It's a big week next week. This week, coming up, is going to be massive. It's boom or bust for some teams. Massive boom or bust week. Let's look at these fixtures for week 5 of stage 4, the final week of the regular season of the Overwatch League. Los Angeles Gladiators will take on the Shanghai Dragons. Oh boy, it's been kind to the Gladiators. Gladiators should be able to seal up their season playoff place with a win over Shanghai at midnight on Thursday, the June 14th. Los Angeles Valiant taking on the San Francisco Shock. This has implications for the stage standings. At 2 AM, I would expect a Valiant win though. Then, a very big game. Very big game. At 4 AM on Thursday, June 14th. It's Seoul Dynasty taking on the Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel obviously want those stage playoffs. Seoul Dynasty need a win. If they lose that match, they cannot get to those season playoffs. It's impossible. Their season is over. They must beat the Dallas Fuel, and every map counts. The best scenario for Seoul there is a 4-0 win. The worst scenario is a loss. Any loss, and Seoul are out. Their season's over. Friday, June the 15th, you have another massive game. Houston Outlaws are taking on the Philadelphia Fusion at midnight. This is massive. Because not only if Houston win, they're getting that win, but they're taking a win off Fusion. Boy oh boy. This is a must win for Houston. If Houston lose this, they're out. And the season playoffs will be decided. Because if Seoul lose against Dallas and Houston lose to Philadelphia, the season playoffs have been decided. And it will be as it stands right now. At 2 AM you have the Florida Mayhem taking on the London Spitfire. This is a bit of a weird one. London, if they win, which they should do, they'll seal their playoffs, but they have a plus 31 map differential, so they're highly unlikely that at least of the 23 and 15 record teams to fall out of those playoff places. New York Excelsior taking on the Boston Uprising at 4 AM. This is a dead rubber in every sense of the word. Excelsior could seal a stage playoff place with a win. Boston Uprising, really nothing to play for. They've got their season playoffs, and they can't get into the stage playoffs. Then the big game, and the games have really not fallen kindly for Houston. On Saturday, June the 16th at midnight, Houston will have to play New York Excelsior. Providing Houston beat Philly, Houston need a win against Excelsior. And yes, Excelsior are experimenting. Excelsior are not exactly, I don't want to say trying, but they're trying out different things and switching things up and making things interesting. Houston could take a win, but it's going to be difficult. Houston Outlaws will need the game of their lives to get into those season playoffs. Two fixtures, the first two fixtures on Saturday will decide everything, depending on the results for the Dallas Fuel Seoul match and the Philadelphia Fusion Houston Outlaws match. At 2 AM you have the Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Seoul Dynasty. If Seoul get the win over Dallas, they then need to beat the Gladiators. It's a tall order for both teams, and I don't see it happening. I think the people who are in the playoff places now are going to be the people who play in the playoffs. I don't think Seoul and Houston can do it. I think they've got too tough an opponents to do it. I don't see Seoul beating Gladiators, and I don't see Houston beating XL, as much as XL are experimenting right now. So it's a big, of course it's a big week, it's the last week of the season, but that's massive. And if Seoul do miss out, that's going to be an upset. From what was predicted at the start of the season, a lot of people were predicting Seoul to win it all, and they won't even be in the playoffs. Dallas Fuel will take on the Los Angeles Valiant at 4 AM. On a lighter note, these all shouldn't have really much implication on what happens. Valiant should probably win this one. But Fuel, it's big implication for the stage playoffs. If they can go 2-0 that week, not only will they knock out Seoul Dynasty for the season playoffs, they'll also probably seal up their stage playoffs spot, and they'll be in playoffs, and they'll have a chance of winning some cash, which is always very nice. But I'm sure a lot of you LA fans are looking for an LA Valiant and an LA Gladiators final, which you were robbed of last stage when they both got knocked out in the semi-finals. At 9 PM you have the Philadelphia Fusion taking on London Spitfire. This could have implications if Houston and Seoul win both of their games, because Fusion would then need to win against Spitfire to guarantee themselves a season playoff place. Spitfire are in those season playoffs pretty much. I don't think they're going to fall out. If London Spitfire were to fall out of the playoff places, that would be massive. but I think the game against Florida Mayhem, they'll seal it up. So it's probably more of an experimental game for London, so it does give Fusion a chance if it does come down to the fact that they need to win. But that is probably the most unlikeliest scenario when you look at the games coming up this week for Outlaws and Dynasty. At 11 PM, you have the Shanghai Dragons taking on the San Francisco Shock. Shanghai with nothing to play for, they will finish 12th. In both the stage and the season standings, there is nothing to play for Shanghai apart from pride, which again, there's not much of that left anyway. San Francisco Shock, they can still get into those stage playoffs. It will depend on the results for the rest of this week coming up, but Shock could still get to the stage playoffs, still win some cash, but by the time that game happens, it could be a dead rubber, but I would expect a Shock win nonetheless. And at 1 AM, you have the Boston Uprising taking on the Florida Mayhem. None of them can reach the stage playoffs. Boston are already in the season playoffs. Florida have got no chance. I would expect a Boston win, but hey, you never know. And then of course, not to forget, we do have those stage playoffs, which will take place the day after on a Sunday. Well, 1 AM on the Sunday, yeah, I know Boston play Florida, but later on the Sunday, 9 PM you have the first semi-final, at 11 PM you have the second semi-final, and then at 1 AM on Monday you have the final, where you will find out your stage 4 winners. And I know everyone like Excel are massive and that, but I want to see someone else win it. I want to see an LA team win it. I think it would be a fairy tale for Dallas Fuel to win it. Wouldn't that be amazing if Dallas Fuel won stage 4? That would be such a fairy tale. And what a turnaround it would be. But that's it. Next week will be the last Overwatch League Roundup for the regular season. They then go on a break until mid-July. I believe actually it's the 11th to the 21st of July, but we'll get into that at a later stage. We're going to have week 5, we'll have the roundup with the results from week 5 and the results from the playoffs, and then the locked in list of people who will be competing in the season playoffs. Then we're going to go on a little break. There'll be a week after. We'll do a roundup for the week after the end of this stage, where I'll go through the playoffs, the seedings, the money that's on the line, how it's happening, where it's happening, and then it will break until those playoffs begin, and it will start looking really interesting, and the big money comes into play. But for now, thank you guys so much for joining me with this video, and I will see you next week. See you then.